During World War II, Japan seized control of quinine production and the Allies scrambled to find a replacement. Scientists in France tried to make a synthetic alternative based on methylene blue, which they knew worked but not very well. The drugs that they made were called phenothiazines and completely failed at treating malaria. But they didn't want to admit defeat and were determined to find a way to make them useful. And what they discovered was that these drugs were pretty good antihistamines. Now, anybody who has ever taken antihistamines knows that they also make you really sleepy. And in 1950, two of these French drugs, chlorpromazine and promethazine, started to be used as sedatives and anesthetics. At the same time, a middle-aged worker in Paris was admitted to a hospital with symptoms of psychosis after randomly attacking people in the street. The doctors on duty decided to sedate him with chlorpromazine, and not only did he calm down, but weeks later, his symptoms of psychosis were completely gone. This was the first schizophrenic patient to be treated like this, and chlorpromazine was marketed as Thorazine in the United States, the first antipsychotic drug. Now, the problem for scientists was that they had a cure for schizophrenia, but they had no idea how it worked. In the early 1960s, people were just discovering what dopamine is, and the first thing they observed about Thorazine is that it affects dopamine receptors. Therefore, it must be working because of dopamine, and therefore dopamine must be causing schizophrenia. This was the birth of the dopamine hypothesis of schizophrenia, and almost every antipsychotic on the market was developed based on this theory. Now, the problem is that this theory has been almost completely debunked. These drugs do act on dopamine, but early drugs tended to be non-selective and act on all kinds of things, and now we have equivalent theories with equally convincing evidence based on almost every other major neurotransmitter, including serotonin, adrenaline, acetylcholine, glutamate, and even cannabinoid receptors. In other words, we've been making these drugs for decades without any clue what we're doing. Now, I am not saying that these drugs are bad or that they don't work. We're in this mess because they do work, and if you are given them, please take them as prescribed. The problem is that in the current regulatory climate, in order for a drug to make it to market, you can't just show that they work. You have to be able to explain why they work. And so we stick our heads in the sand and keep chasing this wild goose so that we can pretend like we know what's going on. And I think that's fine, as long as we keep making progress. But we weren't. Psychiatric drugs are so incredibly powerful and important, but they really suck. About 30% of people with schizophrenia and also with depression are considered treatment resistant, which means that they've tried multiple drugs for long periods of time and none of them worked. Now, for the people who they do work for, these drugs are literal lifesavers, and please, please, please give them a shot if you have depression or if you have a psychotic disorder, because in 70% of people they do work and they will completely turn your life around. But 30% is just too high. And the fact that anyone exists at all who can't be treated after so many decades and billions of dollars of research is a sign that we probably don't know what we're doing. Now, the good news is that things are starting to change. Ketamine and psychedelics are the most recent developments in antidepressants, and they work totally different from all the other SSRIs and TCAs on the market, and they've been amazing at treating resistant depression. For schizophrenia, a new drug just last year hit the market that was the first ever antipsychotic not based on the dopamine hypothesis. And I'm still pissed about it for personal reasons, so if anyone from Karuna Therapeutics watches this video, please contact me because I'd like a war with you. But I'm really happy to see that something has finally made the market after decades of behind-the-scenes research trying to overthrow the dopamine hypothesis. Thank you for watching this video. I hope I was able to share some knowledge here, and if anyone is interested in learning more, check out the references cited in the video description. It can be hard to find time to make these while studying for a PhD, so if you want to see more, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment about what else you want to learn about next. And if this gets some attention, it'll be easier to justify spending time on it. Thanks again, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.